Hello, I'm William Bell. Welcome to the fourth in our series of 7 lessons on 7 signs of the last times. We've been talking about the rapture and why the rapture is not a biblical subject, why it is not an event that's going to happen in our future. We've also talked about the end of the world and showing you that the end of the world is not in our future and that none of the current events which are going on or any of the events that have led up to it in the last few years or even centuries for that matter have anything to do with the end of the world. Now today we're going to talk about that fourth sign, and that fourth sign is the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of by the prophet Daniel. In Matthew chapter 24, a very pivotal chapter on the discussion of the end time, Jesus says in verse 15, "But when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, whosoever reads, let him understand, standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." He says, those who are on the housetop, don't even come down to get your clothes, and those who are in the house, you flee into the mountains. Now this passage was spoken of in connection with an event called the destruction of Jerusalem, the overthrow of the Jewish temple in the first century. When Jesus spoke these messages or spoke this word, he said to his disciples, "See not all these things," referring to the stones of the temple, "there is not one stone here which is upon another which shall not be thrown down." Now in verse 34, he said, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation shall in no wise pass away till all these things are fulfilled." Now when we look at a parallel chapter in Luke chapter 21, beginning at verse 20, the scripture says, "But when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that its desolation is near." He says, "Let not those who are in the countries enter into her. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Why? For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written would be fulfilled." So here he has connected the abomination of desolation. He has also connected the overthrow of the temple with the event known as the destruction of Jerusalem, both in Matthew 24 and in Luke chapter 21. And just as in Matthew 24 and verse 34, in Luke 21:32, he says, "Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things are fulfilled." Now, there are some who believe that the Romans and their ensigns were the event that fulfilled the abomination of desolation. And that is a very plausible argument in view of the statements that we've looked at. But when we turn to Ezekiel chapter 8, and we look at what happened in the former temple, that is the one that was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC, it was the Jews themselves who profaned the temple by their idolatrous worship and all of the abominations that they brought into the temple. And in my opinion, I believe that it more leans toward either the Zealots or some of the Jews' own company who entered the temple before Titus destroyed it and profaned that temple and created those abominations. Nevertheless, whatever our view is there, the scripture is very clear that what the Bible talks about as far as the abomination was concerned was an event that took place within the first century generation. From that, there is no escape if we're going to be true to the words of Scripture. Now, these people who talk about the rapture say so much about literal interpretations of the Scripture, unless, of course, the context merits something different. What happens when we have very clear time statements that say the people who are living in that generation would not pass till they saw all of those things come to pass? Why don't they take those statements literal? I will tell you why. Because if they do, it will destroy their total concept of the end of the world, of a future coming of Christ, of a rapture of the righteous out of the world, and once again, it shows that it's a false notion. I'm William Bell with allthingsfulfilled.com, encouraging you to visit us at our website, www.allthingsfulfilled.com. We also have an additional website which is now going up at lastdays-eschatology.net. Again, that's lastdays-eschatology.net. It's been a pleasure being with you. I look forward to seeing you in our fifth in our series of 7 lessons. And until that time, have a very pleasant day.